Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
It was the strangest ad Alvin had come across in a month of searching. Need a grandfather for a boy, payment negotiable, and a phone number. The people had gone crazy. The rich people had gone crazy. Alvin resented the computer's mouse over the page. Not only do they have personal nannies, drivers, cooks, housekeepers, now they hire grandfathers. And they find them if they write so confidently about their need. The old man had been looking for a job for several months already. He was completely impoverished with this pension. He himself had lived modestly all his life. This paltry pension would have sufficed for one man, but Thunder. The old man thought not so much about his own welfare as about the health of his faithful friend. The old dog, like Alvin himself, has long been in need of good medical support. The cost of a veterinarian's services was scary to think about. Besides, there were no good veterinary clinics in their remote area. Helen's daughter Helen, a veterinarian, was a great professional, but the consumables, as they now called all medical drugs and dressings, had to be bought for separate money. To take a huge old dog to the city, you meet a cab, and not every cab driver will take an animal in the cabin. In short, old people, especially of the dog breed, had a hard time if they got sick. Animal feed has not only become more expensive in recent years, but has reached unthinkable sums. It seemed cheaper to raise a whole bull than to feed a dog or a cat. And Thunder, a dog of impressive size and eats several times more than the owner, but one Spunger, Alvin did not do without. He also fed dogs abandoned by dacha owners because he felt very sorry for them. Betrayed by their summer masters, with the onset of cold weather, these unfortunate animals slowly died, not realizing the proximity of winter. The first to fall ill were the kittens who had not had time to grow up before the frosts. At the same time, their mother cats disappeared somewhere, perhaps surviving as best they could. Squinting their blind, dirty eyes, these abandoned ones crawled out into the weak September sunshine and gained warmth in their fur, but only for a short while. Cold, damp weather would come, and the kittens would disappear somewhere one by one. Adult cats were more viable after all. Nature had endowed them with hunting habits, but even they could not survive the harsh winters. Dogs fared even worse. Loyal to man, they were accustomed to take ready food from the hands of their masters. It was simply impossible for them to get food in the abandoned village in the fall. The villagers did not keep chickens. They did not leave food for their meanly forgotten pets. So Alvin supported them as much as his small pension allowed. He lived in his old dacha. The city apartment was completely ceded to his daughter Helen, who could not arrange her personal life. The old man did not complain. He even liked living at the dacha. No fuss, forest, near the river and clean air, not like in the city. The main thing for an elderly person is peace and quiet. Adult loneliness is not stressful at all. If there are no health problems, it is in youth the soul tears to friends, in a noisy company, to fun and dancing. Every hour, even every minute of communication. Personality absorbs the surrounding world, as if pulling out of it through the environment, the most necessary and important for themselves, and an adult, established man, so much noise is not needed. On the contrary, he has so many thoughts and images in his head, so many things to think about, and yet it would be difficult for a pensioner, in this dacha area almost alone, if not for the joys of civilization. In the village there was electricity, excellent mobile communication, and most importantly, the internet. On any occasion, Alvin went to search engines, read a lot, studied everything that interested him and what he had not been able to do before. He always had a need and could not sit idle for a day. Now that he had finally retired, he was thinking of ways to strengthen his economy, as he called the simple economy, and all the money matters. During the summer months, all the old man's money reserves were exhausted, and he decided to find a feasible job. Don't hesitate, his neighbor told him cheerfully. Jacob, a fat dacha owner, was gnawing furiously with his strong teeth on an apple that had just been plucked from a nearby tree. There's someone to guard the dachas here in winter anyway. Go on, here's a great job for you. Pensioner thought to go and guard, but not so. If before old men worked in these positions, now the easy job was taken by young and strong guys from all kinds of security firms. In the evening, tired from the day's running around the village in search of the bosses, Alvin sat on the porch. The dog, who was nestled near his feet, put his head on his lap. Did Thunder see what was going on? What is so important that they are guarding there, that such strong young men are assigned to the objects? The old man asked, stroking the dog's big head. After all, you have to work on such guys, and they sit there, doing nothing but playing on the phones. He sighed heavily and with a nod, saying goodbye to his friend, who was used to communicating with the dog as with a man. The old man went into the house to think about the next day. In the morning, Alvin again sat down at the old computer and found a couple of phone numbers of organizations, as they say, in walking distance. The first was the construction of high-rise buildings. The new complex was being built just between the city and the village, where Alvin lived for the time being. All that remained was to get the coveted job and to it a salary. Hello. I'm calling you from an ad. I'd like to apply for a job as a security guard. Hello, what have you been doing so far? Why do you want to be a security guard? How old are you? The questions came one after another. Apparently, there were a lot of calls, and a set of questions was prepared for any candidate and memorized by the questioner to death so as not to think too long. I worked at the factory, retired. A woman's voice in the receiver didn't let him finish. No, sorry, we don't take pensioners. They hung up on him. Alvin decided not to get upset and dialed the next number. Hello, is this the store? Do you need a security guard? Yes, I do, but did you serve in the army? The male bass on the other end of the line asked him. Grandpa's phone was a cell phone, but he was so used to thinking that on the other end of the line, Alvin even smiled. Oh, honey, when I was in the service, you probably weren't even alive yet. How old are you? His voice became suspicious. 62. Alvin was getting a little sad. He was starting to realize what was going on. I'm sorry, we're in material security. We need young guys who can use weapons and catch up with criminals. I don't think you'd be a good fit. Wow, they catch criminals. Alvin said to himself, carefully hanging up the phone. No customers in the store, just criminals. This guy must have gone straight from the police to the easy bread, or else. He shook his gray head and dialed the next number, the gym, which was not so close, almost on the outskirts of town, 3 kilometers away. Alvin would have agreed to walk there every day, despite his sore legs, just to earn money. Hello, are you looking for a security guard? He started talking. No, we've already found one. A young man's voice answered him cheerfully. Our former coach just got a job. Excuse me, Father. Good luck to you. There were no more suitable jobs on the old people's website, and Alvin had to go back to the strange ad for a grandfather for a boy. It is strange, everywhere refuse, only after hearing about his age, and here even by the voice instantly determine the old people, and here it is written in black and white that it is required exactly grandfather. I decided to call. What the hell is not kidding? I should at least find out What is the meaning of the grandfather's duties? The old man coughed well, so that his voice did not seem so old and creaky, and dialed the number specified in the ad. A pleasant female voice answered, "Speaking." "Hello, I'm calling from the ad. My name is Alvin." The invisible interlocutor seemed to be very lively. "Hello. Thank you for calling. My name is Clara. You probably thought my announcement was a little strange." Alvin just coughed embarrassedly into the phone, but I can't argue with that. "Alvin, I'd like to talk to you in person, if you don't mind. Where do you live? Is there any chance you could come down here?" "You'd better come to my place," said Alvin. "I live here." He explained in detail how to get to his village and cottage. He pressed the phone and quickly put things in order. Everything was always fine on his plot of land, but inside the cottage, of course, lacked a woman's hand. I changed the tablecloth on the table, cleaned up some abandoned things not subject to prying eyes, even took a towel and wiped off some dust. Then he washed, shaved, put on his new tracksuit, and waited for Clara. Exactly at the agreed time, at 6 p.m., a black Jeep drove up to Alvin's house. A tall man of strong build got out of it. He looked more like a bodyguard than a driver. Opening the door, the driver helped a petite, dark-haired woman out of the Jeep, wearing an elegant pantsuit suitable for the office, but not for a trip to a pensioner's hovel. Nevertheless, the lady walked confidently toward the cottage along the tamped path, already strewn with yellow leaves. Alvin approached the guests with a smile. "Good day to you. Come inside, dear guests." "Hello again," said Clara in an unexpectedly low voice and held out a small, strong hand. The driver nodded briefly and introduced himself. "I am also Alvin." His shake was stiff and as short as the greeting. The host led the guests into the house and offered tea and jam. "Tea makes conversation more pleasant," he explained. "I would love to drink tea, especially with homemade jam." Picked up Clara. "And let's drink tea in your garden. I saw a table with benches there." "Oh, great!" Alvin was pleased. He did not want to show the interior of his cottage, which was not very suitable for such a gorgeous guest. The weather was just fine for early September. The sun was warm, the evening was wonderfully warm and quiet, though in the morning the leaves of the big birches growing in the distance seemed to be falling. Alvin had been drinking strong and fresh tea all his life, adding to it all sorts of herbs, which he had collected over the summer and dried a myriad of them. "Today we have mint tea," he commented, pouring the tea into cups. "I also made my own jam from that cherry tree over there. The berries, see? There are still some left on the top. We should leave cherries for the birds, too." The host also opened a box with beautiful cookies, thoughtfully brought by the guests. The pensioner had never tasted anything like them. The guests seemed to enjoy the view and the fragrant tea, and she gave the jam its due. She looked around the garden with marked pleasure and sighed at the pure air. Alvin, the driver, took his glass of tea and moved closer to Thunder, who had been warned by his host that the guests were his own and should be treated with courtesy. The dog wagged his tail, and the guest turned out to be an expert in canine psychology. The two were also having a good time. Between the old man and the young woman, a warm conversation ensued. "I'm Alvin. I came to you specially to have a look at you at home." At home a man is really open, and you are a hospitable man. It immediately disposes to you. At first glance, everything about you suits me. You do not drink, tidy look in the house, and in the garden you have order, and therefore in the head order. Tell me a little about yourself." "Oh, Clara, my life can't be told in 2 words. I've already lived a long time. The owner of the house smiled sadly. "And you are not in a hurry. I am free from all business for today. The whole evening is free, and you will have a rest from business." My life flowed like all men of my generation, in general. Started Alvin. Finished school, straight into the Army. What's it like here? It was considered a disgrace if a guy didn't go to the Army, and the service was not like today. A real soldier's service, officers, fathers in fact, then long corresponded with cowworkers, and who continued to be friends all their lives. When I came back, I got a job at the plant and worked as a milling machine operator for 43 years. The work requires neatness, accuracy. I liked it very much. I liked the work very much. "And your family?" the guest asked. Yes, I met my Kathy at the factory. She was still a snotty girl when I went to the Army. She was running around in the neighborhood. I didn't even notice her. But when I arrived, I saw her at the gatehouse. I didn't even recognize her. She was so beautiful, and what a golden character she had, except that I was a little jealous when I was young. Alvin laughed embarrassedly. What to say now? It was so long ago. We got married and lived together. Alvin did not like to lie and never deceived anyone, but there was a secret in his life that he had to carry with him. The only person privy to it was his wife, his favorite Kathy. In fact, she was the owner of this very secret. She was also the cause of her husband's secrecy, the only one in question. Alvin, then a young demobilized man, actually met Kathy at the factory gate. They stood in line to mark their passes during the largest gathering of workers before their shift. Alvin hardly recognized in the beautiful girl, with wavy blonde hair and blue eyes, his little neighbor who ran with a briefcase to school. He noticed and remembered her, and in the following days he habitually picked out her pretty figure from the crowd. He himself did not notice how he began to wait for her involuntarily, at first just to see her. Then he began to greet the girl with a nod of the head and a smile. Furthermore, the first lines of greeting began, conversations like, "We are on the way, neighbor." The young people reached out to each other, unexpectedly. That's how it always happens when the heart is waiting for love. Only Kathy could not raise her eyes and look at Alvin directly. She always looked away sadly, although it was obvious that she was also waiting for unplanned meetings on the way to and from work. Alvin started dropping by Kathy's house to ask her to a movie or a dance. The girl shyly refused, but her mother, seeing Alvin as a son of good parents, sent her daughter to take a walk with him. Go on. There's no need to spend your youth sitting by the window." They went to the movies, went to dances, ran to a distant forest for berries, later for mushrooms. Only Kathy was sad more and more every day. One day Alvin talked about the future. "Kathy, that's when we'll be married." He started. Suddenly Kathy sobbed, so desperately and violently that Alvin was confused. "What is this?" He put his arms around her. "What's the matter with you?" "I didn't hurt you, did I?" Kathy wrenched herself out of his arms, crying furiously, wiping her red, swollen face with her fists, and was utterly inconsolable. He sat her down on the trunk of a fallen tree, gave her some tea from a small thermos, and kept silent, barely calmed down, blowing her nose loudly into Alvin's same handkerchief. Kathy muttered muffledly as if to herself, "If we don't get married, we'll have nothing, Alvin. I'm spoiled." Alvin froze for a moment, not understanding what she said, and then he grabbed her in his arms and spoke. "What's this nonsense, Kathy? But where did you find such a word? You're the nicest one I've got." Hugged her tightly and didn't let her go until she started crying again. Only then, with a second burst of tears, did she manage to tell of her trouble, which had been burning her all these 3 summer months while she had been conversing with the young man. By some terrible irony of fate, this misfortune happened to the girl right on the eve of Alvin's return from the army. Saturday afternoon. The young people from their shop had gathered for the birthday party of one of the girls, Lena. Kathy didn't know all the guys very well, but they had been in close contact with Lena for a long time, and with the permission of her parents, also went to a small dacha, where Lena organized her party. At first it was fun. They played, sang, danced. Then a few couples scattered around the plot and nearby bushes went for a walk. Kathy, who was taking part in such an adult party for the first time, felt very tired. She went up to the attic of the cottage and, taking off her sandals, lay down to rest on the sofa. She had visited Lena before and felt confident. The girl did not notice how she fell asleep under the muffled conversations and shouts of the guests. Suddenly waking up, hers was eerie. Something heavy was lying on top of her. She couldn't even move or breathe. As she tried to crawl out from under the weight, Kathy felt rough hands covering her mouth and the stench of vodka booze. Thomas? She was horrified to recognize the new mechanic who had recently joined their shop and had been stalking her with savage persistence since her first days at the plant. It was rumored that he had a very murky past. Often the same odor of booze followed him on Mondays when he stood in the gatehouse. Kathy huddled under his long, heavy body in terror, but there was nothing she could do. She was just a silly little mouse caught in the claws of a predator. Gasping, the girl tried to at least bite the dirty palm that covered her mouth, but to no avail. Nearly fainting from lack of air, she twisted and twisted, but it was too late. She realized there was no escaping her rapist. Then a stunned Thomas was heard. "What are you? What are you, a girl? What a surprise. Just keep your mouth shut, okay? No one will know." Kathy cleaned herself up almost indifferently and turned her back to the wall. She spent the night in stupor, silently pretending to be asleep. In the morning, without giving the appearance of feeling unwell, she went home with everyone else. Noting that Thomas and his buddy Jacob were gone, run off or drunk somewhere, God help them. She wasn't interested in anything. Kathy was out of reality. Only her shell retained the ability to smile, talk, and pretend to be alive. To her mother, who started asking about the birthday party, she said, "Yes, Mother, it was very good." Kathy scrubbed herself in the bathtub with a stiff washcloth, but she could not consider herself clean enough. She could feel Thomas's dirty fingers on her white skin, on her belly, between her legs. The nights passed in agony, and later the girl realized that this was not all. She found herself pregnant by a man she hated. Now she had to hide from people, first of all, from her parents, morning sickness, bizarre choice of food. She couldn't eat her former favorite cheese, cottage cheese and sour cream. The last few weeks had gotten bad with clothes, her belly growing and not interfering with her maiden dress and skirts. Kathy had been drawn to Alvin from the first time she met him, as if he was the only reliable support during those dreadful weeks and months. So terribly mixed up in her life, the misery of her rapist and the happiness of renewed acquaintance with her former mere neighbor, Alvin, that her head was spinning. To master the situation, to decide to make some changes, young Kathy was in no way able. Alvin listened to the whole story with a coolness that surprised the girl. Then he asked, Thomas, where is he?" "I don't know. He ran away somewhere. They say he goes away and comes back a lot. Well, let's go to yours and decide about the wedding," just said Alvin. "Mine are always on my side. A child is happiness." About this Alvin could not tell not only to today's guest, but also to anyone in the world, including his favorite daughter Helen, and he continued his story. There was no time to relax. Soon Helen's daughter was born. While they were raising their daughter, building a dacha, and planting a garden, they did not notice how time was running away. In time, we got an apartment from the factory. Since both spouses have been working for a long time, they gave us a comfortable, good apartment in the city, right in the center. We lived frugally, of course, but we were not poor, but still, we took our daughter to the sea a couple of times. Everything like people. Why don't you live in a city apartment? Clara asked. It would be more convenient for an elderly person in the city and friends and relatives, probably remained, and also the clinic nearby if suddenly there are problems. As I buried my wife a couple of years ago, I felt bad, Slaga. Lowering his head, the old man answered, everything reminded me of her. All our friendly years were remembered. I felt sad, and my daughter had grown up. She had no luck with family matters. Her husband turned out to be unreliable, a drunkard. She left him before it was too late. She decided it was better to be alone than to waste her life with a drunkard. So I decided to leave her there, in her home apartment, and I moved here. It's nice here. Spreading his arms, Alvin sighed widely and freely. I'll always find something to do here. There are plenty of neighbors in the summer. Every now and then they call me to help with something. In general, I'm a man in demand in the summer. I can help someone with a car, someone with a fence or a shed. Fix it, nail it. Men's hands are always needed in the village, and there is enough work in my garden. In the vegetable garden, I grow all my own. In winter, though, it's a bit boring, and I want to work. I've got Thunder. He needs good treatment and food. Doesn't your daughter come to see you? Why, yes, she does. Alvin wanted to take offense. She comes, cleans up, does the laundry. What else can she do? Sometimes she takes away the gifts of her native land, as they say, but she's always busy. She works as a veterinarian. She has a love for animals since childhood, from me, apparently. My daughter and I have always, then a sparrow, fallen nursed, then kittens picked up and put. That's why she decided to study to become a veterinarian, to help our lesser brothers. And my Grom, he is also one of those dogs that are abandoned by their owners when they go abroad. And this happens? Surprised guest. How could it be? There is no worse traitor than a man who tamed an animal and abandoned it. Alvin replied angrily, You should see how many abandoned cats and dogs are left in our village when their owners go to the city. They have a friend, a temporary vacation, you know? And then they go to the city, don't care about yesterday's friends, and animals in an empty village without people's help. How are they supposed to survive? Alvin was not on the point of getting nervous, having touched on his sore subject. That's what I wanted to do. I've got a lot of them here, loyal friends, all hungry. Oh, is that what this is about? Clara gasped. Yes, my Helen saw Thunder and couldn't resist. One day, very wealthy people came to her clinic and asked her to put the dog to sleep. A healthy, beautiful German shepherd. How could they just kill him like that? Helen Mine was just numb with indignation and horror. The owner of the dog didn't want to hear anything. People like him, you see, only hear themselves. All the more that tickets abroad for Grom's owners had already been bought, and they were not going to cancel the trip. Helen Auer only waved her hand, did not even look at the bill thrown by the owner. How can you evaluate life and death? The owner left without saying goodbye. Well, Helen left Grom, hoping to attach to good people, but no one wanted to take an 8-year-old dog, even for free. Helen Mai, as she saw Grom, so and attached, but to take to himself in the city apartment, of course, could not, wanted later still to find for him the owners. Daddy asked me to take him for a couple of days or a couple of weeks. How can I help my daughter? I look at the dog, and his eyes are so sad, as if asking, why did they do this to me? Are you like that too? Believe me, Clara, I felt so ashamed in front of him. Not for me, of course, but for his heartless owners. I realized he was my dog. I immediately fell in love with him, and here we are, 2 old men. What a wonderful daughter you have, Alvin, said the touched guest. It's right, you brought her up. My pension is small and thunder, and I don't have enough, so I decided to look for a job. Now I have a question for you, Clara. Why do you need a grandfather? I think, with your financial situation, you could hire nannies, teachers, or whatever they are, governesses for the boy. The woman smiled, an open, clear smile. Well, my Adam hasn't needed babysitters for a long time. He's 9 years old. But we have a problem with Alvin. My Adam is disabled. He's in a wheelchair. My son was born a normal child. Everything was fine, but only just. I'll start at the beginning. Tell me about it. Alvin prepared to listen. I'll start with the frank. Adam was born without a father. Because of my serious work and busy schedule, nothing worked out with men. Some people see that I have a character, you must admit, strong-willed. They were afraid they'd live their whole life under my thumb. A strong woman, you see, doomed to loneliness. Others, there is such a type, drooled over my property, dreaming how they will live for many years without poverty. So many years have passed in labor. It would seem everything is prosperous in my business, but happiness in my personal life as was not. And no, I couldn't find a man to marry, so I decided to have a child for myself. Well, that's your right, Alvin said. Things happen in life. The main thing is that you have a son. Of course, the woman said hotly. I was happy, Father Adam. He does not even suspect the existence of a son. I made up my mind. The fact is that he is a family man, quite established, a successful businessman. I met him through my work. We had common projects. I don't feel comfortable telling you too much of my personal life. Maybe you don't need it at all. But today I want to be frank. Do you understand, Alvin? Of course I understand. That's what Alvin said. Please tell me everything. Don't be shy. Sometimes it's important to tell someone. Yes, it is. I'm used to dealing with things on my own. My mom wasn't much help with that sort of thing. Maybe she wouldn't even accept my decision to have a child out of wedlock. But this man, it seemed to me that he would be a good fit for my life. He was so reliable, independent, and strong. But by that time, he had a wonderful family, growing children, already school children. I didn't want to cause these beautiful people any grief, you know? Why should I destroy his already established family happiness? And I decided not to say anything to him. I would manage alone, so that there would not be any problems that would interfere with the normal life of my son and me. I gave birth so easily, I was as happy as possible. Everything was good. My business was booming. My mom and nanny were helping raise the baby. So the boy was born and grew up healthy? Her interlocutor asked a question. Yes, everything was going fine. When Adam finished the first grade, I bought a trip to the islands for mom and son to have a rest. That's where the trouble happened. My grandmother died in front of my son. Suddenly, not even expected illness, a heart attack. Adam was shocked, stressed, and on this ground his legs failed. Doctors do not find any pathology. We have not consulted with any medical luminaries. We did not hear anything definite. They all refer to the stress of the child. What only doctors and healers I did not take my son, no one gives no prognosis, only divorced hands. The reason, apparently, is purely psychological. Whether Adam will go again or not is unknown. Some neurologists say that perhaps with some more stress, he could suddenly stand on his own 2 feet. There needs to be some kind of push that can help the boy, but no one guarantees a positive outcome. And what if the next stress, on the contrary, aggravates Adam's condition? No one would take a risk in such a case. Supported Alvin. That's why my son and I have to be prepared for any eventuality. Adam needs a lot of strength to become a real man, to feel like a full man. I want my child to have a future, to be able to continue my business and build a happy life for himself. But there seems to be a perfect example in front of him, his mother. The old man spoke up. "Ah, my dear Alvin." That's when I realized the meaning of the word fatherless. When I was young, I didn't realize how the absence of a father would affect my son. It's still a discreet but purely female environment, you know. The child grows up petted, sees the world from a woman's point of view. Adam needs a man around him with experience, not today's young men who often grow up under mom's skirt and then cannot get rid of this skirt. Mama's sons, such are not able to be responsible for the family, and what a family, they cannot answer for themselves and even provide for themselves. My son, he was born, apparently, so nervous and taking everything to heart. It is especially important for him to be strong, plus he has a delicate soul. We need someone like you. After all, our Adam has never had the confidence of a grown man, and he needs it. So, do you agree? I agree. Without hesitation, Alvin answered. During the time they were talking, Clara opened up to the old man completely, and he could not help but feel her pain for her only son. He was even more struck by the woman's frankness, her complete defenselessness in front of a man she had met for the first time, her invaluable trust. Just like my ward animals, it seemed inappropriate to compare Alvin. How could one fail to justify such trust? The businesswoman immediately began to plan for future cooperation. She instantly picked herself up, opened a small notebook, which she took out of her purse. In the morning, Adam has a school program, and by 2 o'clock he will be waiting for you. A driver will come to pick you up and take you home at 8 p.m. Would that be okay with you? Yes, of course, that would be fine. Alvin nodded his head. Then they discussed the payment. The sum named by Clara was much more than the old man had expected. Alvin was discouraged and even shocked. Slava stood up from the table and again became a real business lady, strict, even haughty and unapproachable. Outwardly, it was manifested in a slightly stronger compressed lips, proudly raised head. Even her height became as if higher. After saying goodbye, the woman left. Alvin was so tense that he was preparing in advance for the upcoming sleepless night. He was very tired from the long conversation. It had been a long time since he had had to empathize with such deep feelings of another person. And he couldn't believe that he would get such money for working as a grandfather. Well, Thunder, let's get on with it. He patted his pet's head. We'll find out tomorrow. Old people often worry about all sorts of things. They tend to sleep badly both after good news and bad news. Alvin was no exception to the rule, and after seeing his new acquaintance off, he couldn't sleep for a long time, tossing and turning in his not wide bed and imagining tomorrow morning what it would bring him, how he would cope with his new position as a grandfather. It's easy to say, but in fact, the task is very, very difficult. Will he be able to find a common language with the boy? Will Adam like to communicate with a strange old man? That's the challenge. Alvin did not think that in his old age he would want to like someone. Grinning at the unexpected thoughts, the old man turned on his left side and finally fell asleep. He woke up early, as was his habit, with a feeling of lightness and some good feeling in his soul. Then he remembered, "I'm going to work today. I'm going to meet a nice guy." He quickly prepared a simple breakfast, fed Thunder, and cleared the table. He was on time. At the appointed time, a car came to pick up Alvin. Alvin's driver honked the horn and looked out the window and waved to Alvin. "Good morning, Alvin." "Ready?" "Yes, Alvin. I'm on my way." The old man replied, and turning toward the dog kennel, he ordered, "Thunder, you're in charge. Keep order. I'll only be 8. Don't miss me." He locked the flimsy cabin door for good measure, put the key in the usual place he and Helen knew about, and ran off the porch. A black Jeep drove them to Slag's house in a matter of minutes. Already at the entrance it became clear that the neighborhood was very prestigious. A high fence limited the part of the building. They had to pass through a closed gate with a barrier, at which stood a guard. In a booth at the gate was a telephone set. "That's what I got," mumbled to himself Alvin, and said aloud, "It's like a closed town here." "Yes," answered Alvin with his usual laziness. "We've got celebrities living here. They're afraid for their lives, you see." Alvin felt a little uncomfortable, to say the least. He did not like to enter an unfamiliar space on a bird's license. The farther they drove into the buildings, the higher the houses were, the more imposing the fences, and now it was not houses, but whole castles rising among the trees. Alvin had never seen such wealth before, except in the movies, and he felt a little shy. The house in which he was to work was also large and beautiful. Alvin led him up the front stairs to the door and held out his hand, inviting him in. "Mary, we're here." He shouted loudly into the back of the house and immediately turned and walked away to his car. Alvin was a little afraid to tread on the shiny parquet floor and probably looked confused, but help came in the form of a ruddy, full-figured woman in a white apron who appeared out of nowhere. "Hello. My name is Mary. I'm the housekeeper. And you are, as I understand, Alvin." She smiled and extended a big warm hand to introduce herself. "Yes," the old man said quietly, looking around at the ceiling mirrors and the chic decorations of the lobby. "Don't be shy, Alvin." Mary smiled even wider. "We are expensive and rich here, but we have simple relations. Everything is human. You'll get used to it in no time, you'll see." Mary went to the big open door to the rooms and called loudly, "Adam, Alvin is here to see you." From the back of the room, an exclamation sounded. Then there was a soft squeak of wheels, and a light wheelchair rolled into the lobby, in which sat a thin, dark-haired boy, easily recognizable as Slag's son, the same warm look in his brown eyes, the same smile. But only a person lucky enough to see the boy's mother in such openness as Alvin had during yesterday's conversation could see the resemblance. The boy approached his guest and smilingly extended his hand. "Hello, Alvin. I'm Adam." The old man shook the boy's skinny hand and said, "Well, hello, Adam. You can call me Alvin, or you can just call me Uncle Alvin." "Well, come on. I'll show you my room," said Adam and rolled forward, at the same time telling about his home. The boy was obviously happy to meet the new acquaintance and wanted to present his favorite corners as much as possible. Alvin looked at Adam with attention and as if he saw himself as a child. He had no experience with boys, no sons or grandchildren yet, but looking into the child's lively face, he vividly recalled his childhood years. What was he curious about? What could he interest the little acquaintance in? And Adam did not seem to be thinking at all. He was showing the guest his household with joy. On the contrary, he showed Alvin his new computer. "Do you use the computer?" asked the boy. "I have to. "But I have a very old one." The man answered. Alvin watched with interest as the boy quickly tapped the keys and typed the necessary words in the search engine. The first word was router. Adam wanted to show his grandfather the possibilities of Wi-Fi. Come on, Adam." Alvin rushed to him. "Explain to me again. How can I connect to it?" His daughter gave him a good smartphone for his birthday, and now Alvin was, as they say, armed with the latest knowledge through the internet. But he didn't have Wi-Fi in his cabin, and he was happy to learn from Adam about its possibilities. The men had a lot to discuss before Mary called them to the table. They talked as equals. Alvin had no time to marvel at how much Adam knew. They went to the kitchen, where the table was set for two. "You're welcome," Mary said in a friendly voice. It was obvious that she was glad to have a new face in the house. "Inviting the guest, Adam." "Mary always feeds me an afternoon snack," Adam said. "We have dinner with Mom. That's later in the evening. Mom is always at work. Sometimes she comes late, and I wait for her." That's when Mary scolds us. "How can you not? You'll get sick to your stomachs living like this." Mary grumbled good-naturedly. "The child is hungry. He's bored to eat dinner alone, and Clara is burning with work, forgetting everything. How can you do that? Yes, war is war, but dinner is on time, as they say." Caught up with Alvin. "Adam, you should grow up. Eat properly. All your strength goes into growth. At your age, now's the time to build muscle." "Yes." Adam was surprised. "And how to build them? Is it to be like wrestlers or heavy athletes?" "And that, my dear fellow, is to eat more meat and vegetables," answered Alvin. "And exercise, strengthen arms, legs, food should be well mastered." Then he realized that he had talked about arms and legs for nothing. But looking at the child's interested face, he continued, "Here is my daughter treats animals. She is my doctor, only veterinary. She has cats and dogs and even birds in patients can be. So she prescribes them just such a diet to recover faster, meat and vegetables." He continued to pour out details from Helen's practice, seeing the interested look of the small interlocutor. Adam looked at him with all his eyes, not forgetting to chew scrambled eggs with greens and drink cocoa. Mary was sitting next to him, propping her chin on her fist, looking at them with quiet amusement. But then she realized, "It's good to be with you, but I have to cook dinner for someone." And she went to the stove. "Does your daughter cure horses?" Meanwhile, Adam was asking, "She does, doesn't she?" Answered Alvin. "Last year the circus came, and their horse was sick. It was capricious, didn't eat anything. Then it went completely sick, but you have to do the program." "Yes. What kind of circus is a circus if the horses don't perform? They're a team, you know. They can't perform without each other. Did they bring her to your daughter?" The boy's eyes went wide. "No, Adam." Alvin shook his head. The poor horse had no time to travel. She wasn't feeling well at all. Helen came and sat by her, talked to her. I don't know what the horse told, but only my daughter realized that the horse's stomach was not working. And the horse, you know how big it is. Laxatives, at least a bucket of them, I think. I didn't ask you exactly, but the horse came back to life in an instant. Just like that? The boy laughed. "Yes, just when it was all right," answered Alvin. But the horse could have been lost, because guess what it ate that wasn't supposed to? I don't know, Adam thought. Carrots, potatoes? Well, she could have eaten carrots and potatoes, especially if she had eaten green potatoes that had been in the sun for a long time. But it was worse. The workers did not see to it and left a bucket near this young mare, in which they washed carrots with a washcloth. Together with carrots, she managed to swallow a piece of loofah. This loofah was the cause of the horse's illness. "You?" Disappointed stretched Adam. "How come?" That's it. The old man spread his hands. That's how it happens when someone is not working hard enough, not in good faith. "And why cannot green potatoes to the horse?" asked Adam. "You see, in the sun and the potatoes, the strongest poison is formed. It's called solanine," explained Alvin. "Such poisonous potatoes should not be eaten by anyone, neither humans nor animals. It is very easy to get poisoned." "Mary, Mary!" Suddenly Adam shouted. "Where are our potatoes? Not in the sun." Frightened Mary, in her haste, did not understand what Adam was asking and answered off topic. "I'll cook the potatoes too, Adam. Do you want them fried or boiled?" "No, I don't need potatoes. I'm just asking if they're in the sun." "No, Adam." Mary was surprised at the question. "We keep them in the cellar." She looked questioningly at Alvin, but there was no time for conversation, and again the men were left alone. Alvin stacked the dishes neatly in the sink of the sink. "Well done, Adam. You've eaten everything. Even my Thunder wouldn't have anything to lick." "Who's that, Thunder?" Adam asked. "That's my dog. He's my only companion in the house," Alvin replied. "Don't you live with your daughter?" Surprised the boy. "No, my daughter works in the city. There is her veterinary clinic. Her patients are waiting for her there, and me and Thunder live here in the village in a cottage." "What kind of dog do you have? Does it live in the house or in the yard?" Adam was curious about everything. "Well, it is uncomfortable for a big dog to live in a house. Thunder, I have Freedom loves freedom. He has a huge yard at his disposal, and at night I let him off the chain and he roams all over the garden. He's a good boy. Helen brought him to me for a reason." "Did your daughter give you a dog?" Adam was surprised again. "Well, whether it was a gift, I do not know. The thing is that my daughter has been picking up all the animals and birds since she was a little girl and putting them back to their owners, and this dog was put to sleep by unkind people when they went abroad, you know. They will live there beautifully, and they didn't need the old dog, so Helen took pity on him and asked me to take him in for a while. And he and I, two old men, became such good friends that now I can't even imagine my life without him." "How great!" Adam marveled. "And I want a dog so much, but my mom says she can't handle it." "Mom has no time. Mary also has no time. They said that the dog should play with it, walk it, and and he pointed sadly at his feet. Suddenly the boy raised his head. A light shone in his eyes. "Alvin, will you introduce me to Thunder?" "Of course, if Mommy lets me." In the evening Clara arrived. She was very eager to know how her son's acquaintance with his grandfather had gone. And all day long she was impatiently looking at her watch. She had a lot of things to do and wanted to go home. She barely waited for Alvin to pull up in front of the house and got out of the car. Alvin, whom the driver had to take home, was already ready to leave. Adam was sitting next to him in his stroller, his face lighting up at the sight of his mom. Mommy, can I go to Alvin's tomorrow?" Clara asked to herself. Wow, the son is already going to visit. So the acquaintance had taken place. The woman was overjoyed that the men had become friends. She greeted Alvin warmly and asked how the day was. "Fine, Mom," said Adam quickly. "I found out about Thunder. I want to see Alvin's dog. May I, Mom?" The mother didn't recognize her usually reserved and bored son. Her face flushed, her eyes burning, and the expression of joy on her pale face pleased her most. She laughed. All right, as long as it's not too much trouble for Alvin." "Adam, have you been so impertinent as to ask for a visit?" "Oh, come on, Clara." Alvin was embarrassed. "I'll be only glad. And Adam will be really good at my place. He and Thunder will make friends, I'm sure. They agreed that in the morning Adam would go to classes as usual, and at 2 o'clock Alvin would bring him to Alvin's house. After saying goodbye to everyone and glancing at the kitchen window, where Mary's silhouette could be seen, Alvin got into the car and Alvin drove out of the yard. Thunder greeted him with a joyful bark, missing him. Well, Thunder, now we'll work together. Alvin spoke, putting a bowl of food in front of him. I'll be the grandfather, and you will be Adam's pets. He is a good, kind boy, and smart to what I am at his age. Alvin laughed softly and waved his hand. The old man was so full of impressions that he didn't even eat dinner. Mary had a good meal today. He sighed. A woman's cooking, yes. After a quick drink of tea with whatever was at hand, he drifted off to sleep, but before his eyes were the boy's shining eyes, the mirrored walls of the fancy house, and the full hands of beautiful Mary. He smiled at this vision and sighed. Life seemed to be getting better. Alvin, as always in anticipation of any guest, began to clean up first thing in the morning, first around the cabin, then inside. He swept the already clean paths, tidied up Thunder's kennel, rinsed his food and water bowls. He did not like this time of waiting, when there seemed to be nothing to do, but his heart was still pounding, where he had overlooked, where he had left a mess. To distract himself, he began to go through fishing gear. The time would pass faster and the heart would calm down, because for an elderly man, any event brings a lot of excitement. Alvin delivered Adam on time. It had only been half an hour since his class had ended. He easily pulled out the stroller and put the boy in it. Adam, looking around and worrying, rolled down the path towards the cabin, but immediately stopped. Thunder, he breathed out. The dog looked directly at the boy with her intelligent eyes, alert with her beautiful ears. She licked her lips and Adam laughed. Well, Thunder, meet him, said Alvin to the dog. This is our Adam. This is your own. You will serve him as you do me. Do you hear? He rolled Adam's baby carriage closer to the dog. Well, here he is. Thunder, Adam, socialize. The boy looked up at him. Can I pet him? Of course you can, Alvin replied. The boy slowly reached out his skinny hand and with a careful movement, placed it on the dog's big head. Thunder. He breathed out. The dog licked his hand and laid his head near the boy's feet. Adam leaned down and continued to stroke Thunder's thick fur. It seemed to him that he could sit like that all day, but Alvin was already calling his guests for tea. Mary had sent some apple pie with Alvin, by the way, so the tea party was a success. It was held in the same place where Clara had sat the other day with her host at a table in the garden. Thunder watched them from his seat, squinting his intelligent eyes and wagging his tail. In the fresh air, Adam's appetite was great, even took a deep breath after lunch. Ooh, he's full. Shouldn't we guys go to my daughter's veterinary clinic? Alvin suddenly suggested it. Alvin, you're with Adam tonight, right? Yes, that's what Clara ordered, answered the mighty Alvin in a bass voice. Let's go, the weather is great. The day is wasted. Come on, come on. And he began to put Adam in the car with jokes he'd only managed to shout. Bye, Thunder, I'll come to you. The veterinary clinic struck Adam so much that he kept silent for a long time, only listening attentively to Helen's story. The girl was not expecting guests, but was pleased with her father and his friends. This is how we work, she said, showing Adam treatment rooms, devices and couches for four-legged patients, and special devices to hold patients in the right position. It would be nice, of course, to update a lot of things, to make repairs, but the boys saw a lot of animals that were receiving medical care. Helen also showed the shelter where the animals are waiting for their owners who have to leave them here for a while. Adam was particularly impressed with Adam, a ward for abandoned animals and birds that had been abandoned by their previous owners. There were also those who had been found, brought in by kind-hearted passers-by. Veterinarians helped them, but they could not arrange permanent residence for these pets, and the poor creatures had to huddle in a small adapted room, where it was dark and quite cramped. Unfortunately, we don't even have any money for them. With a heavy sigh, Helen said, "We feed them what we can. It's a pity for them." The boy was so amazed by what he saw that he drove home in silence. When he was brought home, he waited impatiently for his mother. Finally, she entered with a smile to her son. "Well, what news do we have today?" "You know, Mom, I've been waiting for you so much," declared the son. "I wanted to ask your permission. Can I give my money to feed the animals?" "Wait, what animals?" The woman was surprised. "There, at the veterinary clinics at Helen's, the animals there have nothing to eat, you know? They don't get any money for food, Helen said so." The boy told his mother for a long time about his impressions, about the house, about the abandoned animals. She looked at her son and her heart was warm. She did not expect that the little heart of her child was so kind. "Do you want to help them?" She finally asked when Adam had finished his story. "Yes, I broke my piggy bank. There is a lot of money in there." "What do I need it for?" "I've got everything, Mom, don't I?" "You do." His mother answered him affectionately and stroked his head. "You have a good heart, son. I'm proud of you." "So it's okay." The child's eyes shone. "Well, of course you can, because it's your money. You can spend it as you wish, and it's a good thing." Clara was shocked by such an independent decision of her son. The woman saw in what an elevated mood the boy was. "And this is for 2 days of getting to know Alvin," she thought. "No, I did everything right. A man with invaluable worldly experience. A decent man. It should have happened. I hadn't made a mistake in choosing my grandfather." Meanwhile, Alvin, too, was under a strong impression of the last days of his life. His regime had changed. His surroundings had grown wider. There were new good people around him, and most of all he was happy to communicate with them. It was easy for him to be with Adam. He felt like he was in a distant childhood when everything was easy and simple. They talk, play, socialize with each other, and they don't need anyone else. How could anyone get paid for something like that? The next day, after a day of work, Alvin headed resolutely towards his employer as soon as she got out of the car. "Clara, I somehow got confused and didn't ask what exactly are my duties." He addressed her. "We've only talk and have fun with Adam." "I can't get paid for that, can I?" "No, Alvin, you don't have any special duties. Don't come to us like a job, but like your loved ones, if possible. Talk to Adam like you would talk to your grandson. He's been like family to me from the first minute, Clara. The old man's in a hurry. He's easy for me, but that's the most important thing." The woman interrupted him. "Adam's male influence comes in handy. He's so decisive with his savings. He's a real man." And she laughed happily, and Alvin sighed in relief. It had been 3 months since Alvin had been a grandfather. Every day he became more and more attached to the boy, and Adam responded to the old man in the same way. Mary, the housekeeper, only smiled at the two of them, a lonely woman who had also long lived with the interests of her adopted family. She loved Adam as much as if he were her grandson. She had been unlucky in life. Her husband was a drunk and abusive man. Mary's child died in infancy. Eventually, Mary ran away from her husband and took up residence in someone else's home, which became her own. And now she gave all her unspent maternal warmth to the mistress of the house, Clara. recognizing in her young self, lonely, strong, but also wanting warmth and love. When Alvin appeared in the house, she instantly recognized him as a decent man. He was modest, neatly dressed, but felt the absence of a woman's hand. Going into the kitchen, always notices small things that need a man's strength. Lifts, fetches, and screws what is needed. Mary has more than once caught herself that with pleasure looks at the thin face of a man and thinks, "If only I had once had such a husband." Then she remonstrated and scolded herself. What are you thinking about, young ladies in waiting? But her heart could not command, and again she tried to treat the man something especially tasty. All the more that her favorite Adam, next to Alvin, seemed to acquire a wolfish appetite, and that pleased her madly. She began to prepare larger portions so that she could wrap the rest and give it to Alvin to take with her. "It's a pity, Alvin. Take some food. Don't hesitate to have dinner in the evening. It's too much trouble to cook." He was embarrassed, even blushed a little, but he dared not refuse the treat and was especially courteous to her the next day, when he came with his pupil for the afternoon meal. Now Alvin accompanied Adam everywhere, and to the pool, where the boy had individual lessons, and to classes in the rehabilitation center, and for walks. They never bored each other and always found topics to discuss. Sometimes, when Alvin had the weekend off, Adam would call him and ask him to come over. Alvin thought that without an agreement with the landlady, he should not take too much initiative and was sly. "Adam, you're a man. You should realize that Thunder misses me," he said back, "and some household chores are piling up." "Why?" pulled Adam. "If I could come to you, I would help you and play with Thunder. He wouldn't be bored." And on his last day off, the boy asked him directly, "Alvin, can I come visit you?" "Sure, come if your mom lets you." Alvin breathed out a sigh of relief, and his mother did allow it. Moreover, she brought Adam herself, and she brought Mary with her. Alvin only grunted in embarrassment. Adam and his mother took a ride along the path. Then Clara decided to walk to the woods, and Mary began to clean the house. And as he did not persist, she, smiling, washed, rubbed and scrubbed and said, "It's been a long time since a woman's hands have been here. So Alvin, you let me clean up, and you entertain the guests." The bright winter sun was already beginning to warm up, so the adults were not afraid that Adam would catch cold. Thunder played with the boy with pleasure, forgetting about his old ailments. Adam's options were limited too, so the two were quite content in each other's company. As always, after fresh air, the boy ate boiled potatoes with appetite, dipping them in melted butter. Dinner was prepared this time by Alvin himself. He allowed himself to brag. "Well, the potatoes from our garden are good, crispy, aren't they? And my neighbor's butter, pure cow's butter, I save every year since autumn. Eat it. It's a natural product, not some synthetic one." Clara even squinted. It tasted so good. The day off had gone wonderfully. She said as she finished her dinner, "Thank you for your hospitality, Alvin. It's time for us to go, and Mary has finished cleaning up," said Clara. "Mom, it's so nice here. Can I stay at Alvin's for the night? I'll be gone and Thunder will miss you." The boy's eyes shone and his cheeks blushed. The mother saw how happy the child was in the company of the old man and Thunder. "Clara, let Adam stay. Tomorrow is Sunday. Alvin can come and get him. If you don't trust the old man, let Mary stay. There is enough room for everyone." Alvin supported the boy. Adam looked at his mother in such a belittling way that she hesitated. Here Mary also put in her weighty word. "If necessary, I'll stay here. Let the boy play in the fresh air, and all in the city, and in the city." and tomorrow night you'll send a car for us. What am I going to do with you?" "Stay, you insolent guests," laughed Clara. From that day on, Adam's overnight stays at his grandfather's house became quite frequent. Adam spent almost every weekend with Alvin. Sometimes Mary stayed overnight to prepare a good meal for the two men, but this happened very rarely because her main work required her presence in the big farmhouse. The old man and the boy were so strong that the two of them never got bored, and thunder did not let them get bored. Spring came, and one weekend, watching Alvin dismantle fishing gear, Adam became interested in unfamiliar objects. "What's this? What's this? And how does the feeder catch?" he asked Alvin. He patiently, even with pleasure, showed everything and told about the tricks of fishing. "Wow," the boy's eyes lit up, "and I have never been fishing." Alvin realized it was time. If in time to support interest, it will be Adam's gift for life, and if you lose this moment, so it will fly away, and the boy will not become a fisherman, never in his life. "Well, tomorrow then, without any solemnity," he said. "Let's go to bed, and tomorrow at 5 a.m. we'll meet the dawn at the river." Adam gasped. "Really? We'll get up and go. That'll be the truth. We're our own masters, aren't we?" Trying not to show his excitement, Alvin answered him. Yes, he was worried. The boy was not used to hardship, the damp morning, the chill, and the damp air. There was no telling if he would enjoy it all, but it was said done. Up at the right time, quickly packed and set off, Mary grumbling and putting on Adam a warm old Alvin jacket, kept shoving them a bag of food, then crossed discreetly to the boy his stroller. It was Adam's first fishing trip. You can't go far in a stroller, and it was decided to fish in the pond, about 500 meters from the road. The old man spoke in detail about how to fish properly, how to string worms, how to cast the rod. At morning dawn, beat good, Alvin began to drag one fish after another. Adam awkwardly slung the rod, long, uncomfortable, but here he was lucky, a bite. He froze, looking at the float, then looked at Alvin. He said silently, "Pull." The boy pulled the rod. A small, silvery fish flashed in the air. "Yay!" Alvin shouted in a whisper, and Adam immediately picked up the joke. Hooray! The joy of catching their first fish was greater than the new cell phone they'd bought for Christmas. The fishermen got into the excitement and didn't notice how time flew by. Soon there was a nice catch in the bucket. Alvin was pleasantly surprised that Adam did not show any weakness of spirit. He patiently chased away the mosquitoes that were so pesky as the air warmed. He didn't whine when the fishing hook got caught in his hair, and in general, he was a tough little man. That afternoon, Mary boiled the royal fish soup in her own special recipe, and the rest of the fish were roasted on the brazier, and the men went together to build the fire and clean the fish. Despite being tired and unaccustomed to hard work for him, Adam did not think of giving up. He also cooked fish on the fire for the first time in his life and was proud that he was really helping adults. He enjoyed looking at his hard-earned calluses and scratched, hooked fingers. He might not become a fishing enthusiast, but this joy would stay with him for the rest of his life. Alvin thought, and Mary, looking at the way her favorite flies to the soup, rejoiced, strengthened health, and ruddy cheeks Adam. Summer days passed one after another. Adam got tanned and strong. Mary laughed. Before this summer, she had been racking her brains, inventing a particularly tasty dish for the boy, but here he ate everything and asked for more. A healthy body is a healthy spirit. The driver Alvin exclaimed, feeling how the boy was getting stronger. He had to lift both the child and the wheelchair to load them into the car, and he could tell exactly how much his ward weighed before his walks with his grandfather and how much he weighed now. Fall was approaching again. One Saturday evening, Mary and Adam also drove over to Alvin's house to take a break from the noise of the city and enjoy the last of the warm money together. Mary and Alvin, for a long time, have not hidden mutual sympathy, and the woman did not hesitate to come to patronize in his bachelor household to prepare dishes tastier. It was a quiet, peaceful evening. Nothing boded ill, but age sometimes gives out unexpected and unpleasant things. In the evening, Alvin suddenly felt sick, shortness of breath and dizziness. In order not to cause panic in Mary, already prone to excessive worry, he quietly called Adam. "Adam, I don't feel well. My blood pressure must be up. We won't make any noise, or we'll scare Mary. I'm going to take my medicine and lie down while you feed Thunder. I'll just lie down for a while, and then we'll go to dinner with you." Adam nodded understandingly and rolled the baby carriage to the dog kennel. He fed Thunder, scratched him behind the ear, and talked to his four-legged friend. It was time to go after Alvin. When the boy pulled into the old man's room, he saw Alvin lying on the bed, the man's eyes closed, one arm dangling to the floor. Adam was frightened. It seemed to him that the old man was not breathing. "Grandpa Alvin, don't die," shouted the boy. Without remembering himself, he jumped up sharply from the chair and took a few steps towards Alvin. But from the strain near the very bed, he fell to his knees. Alvin jumped up on the spot in horror. "Jesus, Adam! What happened?" He shrieked, scooping the boy up under his arms, lifting him off the floor. Adam, both crying and laughing. "I was frightened. I thought you were dead." "Well, Adam, don't cry. It's all right. Nothing's going to happen to me. It must have been the medicine, and I dozed off. And you? Did you come to me by yourself?" "I don't know. I guess I don't remember. I was really scared." Alvin sat on the floor, cradling the child, and could not understand anything. Was Adam so shaken by the fright that he was able to take independent steps? The man believed and disbelieved, but for now he was afraid to test his hunch. Adam sobbed one last time and looked up at him. "Grandpa Alvin, don't tell Mom I cried," he said embarrassedly. "Oh, come on, honey. Of course I won't. Did you cry?" "I didn't see any tears." Alvin pressed the child's blonde head to his breast and kissed the top of his head discreetly. He was touched to the core by the boy's anxiety. Meanwhile, a frightened Mary appeared in the doorway, having come running to Adam's shrieks from the far corner of the garden. "What on earth is going on here?" she exclaimed, poking her head through the doorway. "Is everyone alive? What's going to happen to us? We are strong men, almost heroes," answered Alvin with a smile. He pulled Adam away from him and offered, "Come on, let me lift you up, and we'll try to take a few steps. Don't be afraid, Adam. I'll hold you up." The old man lifted the boy off the floor and held him up until the boy had his legs spread firmly. Mary froze in tense anticipation, but remained patiently silent. "Well," quietly ordered Alvin, and Adam took the first step. Even though his grandfather held him with both hands, even if it was only one step, but he took it himself. Adam was covered with sweat, his face was flushed, his eyes were fixed on his feet, as if he was mesmerized by their movements. Alvin gently nudged him forward, and the boy took another step, then another, and now the old man slowly led him around the round table across the small room. After taking a few steps, Adam looked up at his grandfather with some crooked, tortured smile, as if not believing himself. Then hesitantly, with Alvin's encouragement, he took a couple steps toward the exit. "Jesus, Adam." Mary, who was standing in the doorway, embraced him with her arms and pressed him to her warm chest with all her heart. The woman cried and kissed the boy with wet lips, then took his head away from her, was immediately frightened that he was standing almost on the same level as her, on his own feet, and began to cry with joy again. Everyone was stunned, in a ghastly excitement, dropping something now and then, murmuring their worries. Mary set the table, and the men, silently digesting the excitement of the minutes past, smiled at their thoughts. Finally, the hot tea helped everyone to calm down and relax, and the three of them began to remember anew what had happened, trying to make everything look funny or amusing. Needless to say, the feelings of the three loved ones when they went to bed quite late in the small house among the greenery of the garden. The boy, as might be expected, was tired after an unaccustomed walk. Even though it was only a dozen other steps, but for him it was equal to a space flight. Therefore, the hero fell asleep with a happy smile on his face. Alvin, as always, was worried about the future of Adam. Would the child be able to overcome his fear? Would he go with confidence and determination? Would this urge to walk turn out to be a remission? He tossed and turned for a long time, remembering his fear, then smiled when he saw Adam's frightened face again. At old age, you don't give a restful sleep. Well, and Mary, according to the eternal female habit, prayed fervently for her beloved Adam, asked the Lord for mercy, and secretly admired Alvin. If it weren't for him, none of this would have happened to Adam. It is he, Alvin, who helps the boy to find strength. And then she shamefully hid her face from herself in the pillow after Alvin suddenly snapped. In the morning everyone remembered yesterday's joy. Adam could not wait to start walking as soon as possible. Since the evening, the adults had warned him not to start walking on his own in the morning. Your leg muscles are still very weak. It's dangerous. You have to take it easy for the first few days, Alvin explained. Be sure to wait for me, just the two of us. Adam promised. He barely waited for breakfast to be over, even ate against his custom. Not as well as usual. Well, hurry up. Now. Alvin smiled at him. Thunder watched in amazement as his two masters, big and small, intertwined into one four-legged creature, passed by his kennel time after time. Adam had a hard time walking on the ground. The path seemed to curl up under his feet, as if on purpose, preventing him from walking. The boy was sweating and out of breath, but again and again Alvin spoke. Let's go. He practiced so persistently that after lunch he didn't even object when Mary laid him down in the shade on a wide bench. Happy, he fell asleep in the fresh air, only his cheeks flushed with a healthy blush, and the old men sat together, admiring the sleeping child and talking quietly about their own things. What happiness God had given them, how great it was to be not lonely in their old age, how good it was in the garden today. They didn't talk about everything, of course, but they kept silent about something secret. It was Sunday evening, and they waited anxiously for the arrival of Clara at the dacha. Finally, her black Jeep stopped near the gate of the cottage. When she opened the gate, the woman saw that the wheelchair was empty and standing orphaned, and Adam was walking carefully along the path leading to the house. He was being carefully supported by Alvin, and next to him was a huge Thunder, forgetting about his advanced years. Clara stood silent and cried, afraid to break their idyll. She even managed to hold back a cry of joy and waited until her son came to her. Then they had tea again, talked about yesterday's events, discussed every little thing that came to mind. Excited Adam dreamed how he would go fishing, then to the forest for mushrooms then. There was no end to his dreams. Wait, Adam. Alvin slowed him down. Remember what Helen said about the weakened wings of birds that don't fly for a long time in the hospital? So did you. Your legs have been immobile for too long, and now the main thing is not to hurt them. You and your mom will show yourselves to the doctors. They will tell you how to restore their strength, and then you and I will go anywhere. Finally, they began to get ready to go home. When the boy got into the car, Alvin said to Clara, "I guess you don't need me anymore." Adam, of course, must be urgently shown to the doctors, although I can tell you without doctors that everything will be fine. The old man became sad. He would not go to his pupil every morning now. Tears were ready to come to his eyes. Clara hugged him heartily. "Don't be silly, Alvin. How will we be without you? I have no words to express my gratitude to you. You not only became my son's grandfather, but you replaced the father I don't remember. You will always be a part of our family. Yes, you are like family to me too," the old man said, quietly wiping his eyes. He waved after the car for a long time and knew that tomorrow the young woman would call him and invite him to her place. Mary, holding Alvin by the arm, slowly walked along the leaf-strewn path to the house. Today they again visited the cemetery where Kathy, Alvin's wife, repented on the day of her death. Mary carefully tidied up the grave of a woman she had never known, but from her daughter Helen she judged that Kathy was a kind and sincere woman. Otherwise, how could Helen grow up to be so kind-hearted and hardworking? "It's just a pity that things didn't work out for my daughter with her family and children," Alvin always regretted, and she was left alone with her beloved animals. "You, Alvin, do not anger God," Mary consoled him. "What can you do? Not everyone is given such happiness as having children. So you see, I've lived my life like a barren flower. Yes, you are Mary, and now you are still quite blooming." The old man smiled and grabbed to hug his girlfriend. "Wow, barren flower, what would I do without you?" They became friends immediately, from the first days of their acquaintance, and then lived together to brighten up two lonely lives. At first, Mary stayed for the weekend. Then, as she grew older, she was replaced in the big house by Clara, a young assistant, and she finally moved to Alvin's house. The two of them were calm and joyful. They walked leisurely around the garden, trying to please the children with apples and ripe plums. The number of children, along with Helen, had long included Clara and Adam, who had grown into a tall, handsome man. All these years, Alvin's life went not just next to, but in close connection with his new family, Clara, Adam, and Mary. Clara more than once or twice invited him to move into her house. She even offered to build a small outbuilding in the same yard so that he wouldn't have to travel back and forth. But the old man held independent views in everything. Moreover, now he was not alone. Luckily for him, he met Mary, who doted on two men, Adam and her Alvin, as she always called him. Helen was incredibly glad that her father was not alone. She quickly became friends with Aunt Mary, as she began to call his new, although not young, wife. The old people didn't sign. Why such tenderness? It is not their business to attract unnecessary human attention to themselves. It is enough for them to live nearby quietly, so that there is a companion on a cloudy day, a sunny morning, or a sleepless night. With the groans of an old man, there is no escape. Helen came to see them quite rarely now because she was addicted to tourist trips around the country. The old people's house was filled with magnets, souvenirs, all kinds of embroidery and rugs from different parts of the world. Adam has grown up over the years, graduated from school and college. No one would have imagined that the handsome young man, who was once disabled and spent several years of his childhood confined to a wheelchair. At the beginning of his career, he completed an internship at Clara. Mom wanted her son to have his first experience under her supervision. However, after receiving his diploma, the son decided not to work with her. "No, Mom, no," he stated firmly. "I don't want to be a mama's boy. That's the first thing. You will understand me here, right?" Mother could not resist his disarming smile. "Well, suppose I understand, but I wouldn't control you so much." She objected weakly, clearly realizing that in fact, she could not help but interfere with her son's work. And what Mother could? "And the second reason is, I'm not interested in your industry, Mom. You know, I have always dreamed of internet technologies. What should I do now?" "Forget about your dream?" Clara, of course, agreed. She remembered herself very well in her youth. She never knew how to obey someone else's will. She did everything in defiance of everything. If only he could achieve his goal. Maybe this is the secret of her success. Well, she won't cross her boy's path. Let him build his life the way he likes. He is an adult, independent man. Adam really wanted to achieve everything himself, as Alvin once taught him. Not believing in God or the devil, Clara only gasped and mentally spat to the side so as not to jinx it when faced with his stubbornness, bordering on stubbornness. Her weak boy, who once suffered from 2 strong experiences, imperceptibly grew stronger physically and spiritually, and all thanks to the fact that he received life lessons in time from an old, unremarkable, in general, man, Grandfather Alvin. Clara thanked fate for receiving some kind of magical hint that summer. Her son needs a friend, a mature man, an experienced and decent person. So people who were completely strangers to each other became close and became, in fact, one family. Adam, having left his hometown, did not abandon his grandfather Alvin. He made sure to deliver him a good computer. And now Alvin was a user, better than some of the young people, and he and his mother also organized a good renovation in the country house where 2 of their relatives now lived. And the life of Mary and Alvin became completely comfortable. Clara also met her fate at an exhibition of young artists and got married. "Hello!" It came from behind the gate. "Do you accept guests?" "Oh, Clara!" Alvin was happy. "Mary, put on the kettle." Clara and Ethan arrived. "We came to you for a reason," said joyful Clara. "We brought you invitations. So Adam's wedding is coming soon." And she handed Alvin an envelope decorated with 2 doves. Behind her, the silent bumpkin Ethan smiled, who, smiling so silently, made friends with the inhabitants of the country house and the young shepherd Rada, who was sheltered after the death of Thunder. It turned out that Adam met a good girl and proposed to her, and now joyful chores lay ahead, preparing gifts, dressing for the wedding. "Well," Clara said, finishing off the delicious tea from Alvin with his signature dried herbs. "Tomorrow we will pick you up at this time. You need to buy beautiful outfits." "What about us, old people?" Both protested. Clara stopped them with one wave of her hand. "Come on. Our Adam must have the most beautiful relatives. Do you agree? It's a shame. What will the bride's relatives think?" The old people sighed. Yes, it was not worth disgracing the boy. Alvin and Mary were among the most honored guests. "Meet these 2 people who are dearest to me." Adam introduced them to his bride and matchmakers. "My grandfather Alvin. I owe my character, strength, and health to him. And this is Mary, my nurse and water maid, well, almost a nanny. And now she's also a grandmother, since she's my grandfather's wife. I'll tell you a lot of good things about them." Alvin and Mary were embarrassed, furtively looking at the beautiful bride and their pet Adam, but soon got used to it and completely devoted themselves to the holiday. The guests had fun, said toasts, as usual, wishing the newlyweds eternal love, family happiness, and many children. Mary, as usual, cried with joy in such cases, and Alvin only grunted with displeasure, wiping an unsolicited tear from his eyes.